Hello traders, Rich here and welcome to Kucoin as episode 4, and today we are going to talk about channels. If you don't know about Kucoin, it's one of the largest crypto exchanges in the world with over 600 billion traded volume on the platform and 10 million registered users from more than 200 different countries. Kucoin has many features like margin trading, spot trading, trading bot, staking, mining and so on with over 600 listed coins. If you don't have an account yet, I'll make sure to include my referral link in the description below, and if you create an account through it, you will benefit from 20% discounts on your trading fees. So let's get started, and as usual, cheers. So first of all, what is a channel? And of course, later on, you know me, I like practical examples. We'll go over like 10 altcoins, which are forming the exact same pattern, which is a falling channel. But first of all, what is a channel? We've got three types of channels: an upward one or a rising one, whatever you want to call it, a horizontal channel, and a falling one, which we will go over now. So if you are overall bullish, price would be making higher highs and higher lows, right? And we will try to draw a channel. Of course, we've got wedge patterns, rising, broadening wedge, and so on, but this is a topic for another video. For today, we'll focus on channels only. So we want to find the overall movement, because you know me, I always start from higher time frames, daily and weekly, to know where we are in the market, to get a feeling about the overall market, and the channels will help us do that. If you are bullish, we'll try to cover this movement, or what I call, which engulfs this over movement, which give us a feeling about where the price might go next, whether it's around the lower bound or the upper bound. Okay, so we draw our trend line first if you are overall bullish, and we try to make an offset for it. So we copy paste or we click on control, drag and drop it, and draw the upper bound. The exact same thing for a bearish one. So we draw the trend line by connecting the highs, right? And then we try to make an offset for it. For example, like this, you press on control and you drag and drop it, or you can simply click on Control C, Control V, and this is it. Okay, so we are bearish, and this channel engulfs this overall movement downward until eventually it's broken upward. Then we've got a potential reversal. The exact same way we approach the chart if you watch my previous video about market structure. If you haven't, don't worry, you can find it on my YouTube channel. So this is it. If you are horizontal, you will see price failing to make consecutive higher highs and higher lows, instead making a higher high and then making a higher low like this, or a lower high, higher low. So we've got a mixture of higher highs, lower lows, and so on. So you know that you are currently inside a range, and we try to identify the upper bound and the lower bound. And here we have a horizontal channel, or also known as a rectangle. So let's take some examples about the channels. For example, here we've got H bar. And let's go to daily time frame. You've got many channels here. So let's start with this one. And of course, we'll go over as many as possible. I've got a big list where they are forming the same pattern. So for example, on each bar, price was trading lower, approached a support area, which we can see clearly previously. It's a demand actually, as we had an aggressive movement upward from it. So starting from here, that's our demand area. Then price retested it and formed a channel. But for today, we'll focus only on channels, even though they are not a standalone strategy. It's just to over direction, and we only take action upon a channel once broken upward or downward if we have more confluences. And we learned about head and shoulders. For example, we've got an inverse head and shoulders pattern here, a channel, price broke the neckline and traded higher, and we've got a demand zone. So you mix up, you keep on adding confluences to understand the chart more. But for today, we'll focus on channels as mentioned previously. So we've got a channel here. Price is making lower highs and lower lows, right? Then price failed to make a lower low, instead made a higher low, and then price broke it upward. We can see that we've got a falling channel in this case, then price broke it upward. Of course, we don't buy immediately after the trend line, the upper one, is broken upward, because it's not a laser line. It's just for overall direction, and you should, for example, treat it as an entire area. For example, it should act like this. But to keep our chart clean, we always draw it as a laser level, but we treat it as an entire zone, just like we treat a horizontal support and resistance, which we also covered in the previous episodes. So that's it. We were bearish, then price broke upward, the momentum was shifted from bearish to bullish, and vice versa. Then we were bullish, we had a rising channel, right? Of course, meanwhile, inside the channel, you can look for sell setups here. Inside the channel, you can look for buy setups here because it covers the overall movement. We are bullish in this case, and we are bearish in this case. We'll be looking for a trend following setup, in this case for a sell, in this case for a buy, until eventually it's broken down. So from a higher time frame, daily and weekly, we know that we are bullish. Then around when price approaches the lower bound, you can zoom into lower time frames to look for a trend following setup, until eventually this channel is broken down, which is the main topic of this video, that we are bullish, broken downward, and we had a shift in momentum from bullish to bearish. Vice versa, we are currently overall bearish, trading inside this channel, right? So we are bearish. As price approaches the upper bound, we'll be looking for trend following sell setups until eventually it's broken upward. Then momentum would be shifted from bearish to bullish, just like previously. And one more thing, you'll be able to get an idea about if the price is overbought or oversold from a channel. You don't have to like check RSI or whatever indicator, momentum or oscillator you are using to identify if the market is overbought. You can simply see it through price action. While drawing a channel, for example, we can know that price is overbought around this area because it's approaching the upper bound, right? This is what I call the upper bound, which engulfs the entire movement. So as price approaches this area, which is our lower trend line, of course, again and again, it's an entire area, so you should treat it like this, okay? But you've got the idea. As price approaches this zone, it would be oversold and will be looking also for buy setups on lower time frames. So technically, if you are bullish, we're looking for buy here around the lower bound and sell here around the upper bound, vice versa. We'll be looking, of course, like now it's formed, so we're looking for sell here and buy here until eventually, this is like from a medium-term perspective inside the channel. But from a long-term perspective, once it's broken upward or downward, then we would have a shift in momentum from bearish to bullish or bullish to bearish. So that's basically it on H bar, waiting for it to approach this area to look for buy setups, and then waiting for this, of course, then we'll be looking for sell here until eventually it's broken upward, then the momentum would be shifted from bearish to bullish. We've got a very similar one on OMG. Now we've got like a flat one, right? It's not horizontal, it's still a falling one, but it's almost flat. And we've got a big inverse head and shoulders pattern forming, head left, right, or it might also dive lower. In this case, would have a double bottom pattern, and the neckline would be around this area. But for now, let's focus on channels. And of course, we also got an overall movement. In this case, it's a rising broadening wedge, and we've got a demand zone and so on. But for this video, we have a channel here, and we are waiting for the bulls to take over from a long-term perspective and break above it to have a shift in momentum from bearish to bullish. So we're bullish, shift in momentum, and now we are waiting for the bulls to take over. Meanwhile, as price approaches the lower bound, we'll be looking forward for buy setups from a medium-term perspective until eventually this happens for the bulls to take over from a long-term perspective. Now we have a wedge pattern. Maybe we'll talk about wedge patterns in the next episode because they are stronger than a channel, and of course as a reversal pattern. Okay, so now we had a wedge pattern previously and we were waiting for price to break above it. It didn't happen. That's the power of waiting for extra confirmation. Then price got stuck inside this channel. So now price is approaching the lower bound. It's an entire zone, so you should read it like this, for example. Okay, so from here to here. But you got the idea. As price approaches the lower bound, which is also a support area, a demand, and so on, of course, we can still trade lower and lower and lower until we have a shift in momentum. Okay, so when we have a channel, we would be overall bullish and price can get aggressive and go parabolic and break above the upper bound, which we might get also an idea that the buyers are too strong now and not respecting this channel even. So like they are not moving in the same like path as they were doing before. Instead, they are going parabolic. This is also where you can get this idea from price action only. Anyway, we are now inside this flat one. As price approaches this area, we'll be looking for buy setups. As price approaches this area, We'll be looking for sell setups until eventually it's broken upward for a shift in momentum from a long-term perspective. You can see this channel all over the place, right? Of course, price can still trade higher, invalidated, but this is just for overall movement. As price approaches the lower band, it would be oversold in my opinion. And as we learned previously, then we'll be looking for buy stops from a medium-term perspective, sell setups here until eventually it's broken upward. Of course, price can still trade lower aggressively, as I showed you before. In this case, like going this way, the sellers would be very strong, breaking below this support for it to become a resistance and so on. Okay. On algo, we can see a flat one, just like the one we saw on OMG, if you remember. So a flat one, now we'll be looking for buy stops from a medium-term perspective, and then eventually until it's broken upward, the bulls would take over from a long-term perspective. On crypto.com, Crow also approaching the lower band. So this is how you can get an idea about where the price might reject. So if you don't have this one, like you might really know, right? But once you have your upper trend line in case of a falling channel, and then you add the lower band, you get an idea that price might reject this area. Of course, it's an entire zone, so we might get a reversal from here, we might go a little bit below it before trading higher. But it's very important to always try to make an offset for the trend line to know or to get a feeling about where the price might reverse from the other side as well, not only the one that you use the swings to draw from. So looking for buy setups here from a medium-term perspective, sell setups here until eventually we see the break upward. On BAT, the exact same one, we had a wedge pattern, price didn't respect it, didn't break above the last high, which we saw previously. As you can see, I still have my alert here around the one, which is also a strong support and resistance, which I went over during the support and resistance episode, if you remember. So now we have a shorter term one this time, and you can see the same one on XRP. We'll check it out in a bit. So as you can see from a longer time frame, you've got this channel. You know what? Let me draw it real quick. Let me update this one and draw it for you. That's how, like, you can see that we've got a channel inside a channel, right? So you know what? Let's make an offset for it. Control and drag and drop. So now approaching the lower band, right? Which is also a support area, a demand, and so on. You can see it better from higher time frames. Look at how strong this support is. And price is now approaching the lower band. How do we know that it's the lower band? We connected these two. We made an offset for it. This is it, right? Of course, price can still trade a little bit like what we call overshoot it a little bit before trading higher, or unless it's broken down entirely in an aggressive manner, then it would become a resistance and we trade lower. But that's a perfect example of a channel inside a channel. So now we are bearish, bullish, bearish, and waiting for this bullish movement. If you zoom into H4 time frame, we are waiting for this and a break above it to have a shift in momentum from bearish to bullish. So previously, here we go, and we previously had this channel, price broke up, shift in momentum, and we are currently waiting for this movement. We can see in the exact same one on XRP, right? So here we go, a very strong support from weekly time frame. Oops, I don't want to see it here. Let me remove it real quick. Okay, so got a very strong support. Oops, I keep pressing the wrong one. So this is it. So on weekly time frame, approaching a very strong support area, looking for buy setups until eventually it's broken downward, then it would become a resistance. From a shorter term time frame, if you zoom in, you can see it better from H4. We'll be waiting for this to have a shift in momentum from bearish to bullish. In this case, our trigger would be a break above the previous high. On ICP, a very similar one. You can see we had a wedge pattern, if you remember, like Link and H bar and so on. Wedge pattern now going flat, which means from a market structure 101, if you remember on the previous episodes, big impulse movements, correction, a big impulse movement also. The sellers are, or the bears are very, very strong. As you can see, a flat one, resulting in a lower low, but as you can see, it's going flat and smaller. So this one is clearly smaller than this one and smaller than this one. Now the last impulse is going flat, which means, and you can see it very clearly if you connect the lows, here we go, 1, 2, 3, and that's it. So now we're expecting this. Of course, it's just a speculation, It's just like for overall movement, for the buyers to take over, we need to see this one. We need to see a break above the high from a market structure, as we mentioned previously, which is also a resistance, turn support multiple times. We want to break above it. Anyway, that's why you see my alert here around 25, which would mean that the buyers will finally take over. From a short-term perspective, now price is approaching the lower bound, a channel broken upward, a channel waiting for a break above it. That's how you feel the overall market, the exact same analysis as previously. Now you can zoom into lower time frames and draw a shorter term channel here and wait for its break upward. Meanwhile, we are bearish, right? So when you have a channel, we are bearish until you see a break, or you always wait for extra confirmation. On XTZ, Tezos also approaching a strong area. If you zoom into daily time frame, you can see a very clean channel as price approaches the lower bound starting from here, because it's an entire zone. We'll be looking, right, for buy setups. We don't buy blindly because price can still trade lower and lower and lower before reversing or even break it downward, as mentioned multiple times. So that's it from a medium-term perspective, and this would be it from a long-term perspective. As the price invalidates this channel, showing to us that the buyers are now strong enough to break below the previous price action. Okay, so that's it on IOTA, which is like, I guess, last but not least, because like this, I've covered many examples already, approaching this support area, looking for buy stops. We don't buy blindly. We've got a resistance here, support many times previously broken down, now acting as a resistance, and we had this bearish trend. The impulse are getting smaller and going a little bit flat. We can see that this impulse is now strong, resulting in a low. That's why we are technically still bearish from a long-term perspective. And for the bulls to take over, we need to see this, a shift in momentum from bearish to bullish, which is engulfed by this channel. Meanwhile, and as price approaches the lower bound, just like previously, we'll be expecting, because like we didn't have this one previously, we drew it from these three, 1 to 3, we drew this channel. Now, as price approaches the lower bound, we'll be expecting a movement similar to this one, right, from a short-term perspective, and then this, if this happens, from a long-term perspective. That's it for channels. Hopefully next we'll cover rising broadening wedge, like a wedge pattern also, and many more patterns. Best of luck. I'll see you on the next episode, and feel free to ask any questions in the comment section below, or request a specific topic or an altcoin analysis, and I would be happy to do it. See you soon.